Jumbo Juminde Deshi Sheba Rajumba Yanda Bobe Sanje Riba Shazunde Devara Shebo Jiden Jimbo Jibu Dube Kalo Yubo Lana Mebo Lada Lena Yetuba Sanje Jube Penya Shaya Tubo La Chadun Chodo Yazu Jumbo Jundin de Deji Shebo Rajumba Yanda Bobe Sanje Riba Shazunde Devara Shebo Jiden Jimbo Jibu Dube Kalo Yubo Lana Adam menage dumbo sanje jumden de belya şaya kuvan açar. Yodo canır cembo dumbo jumden de şeba yanda bo tobe sanje riba da şasu dema devara şefa. Didin cembo jivu düve halu yuva lana mimba adam enayde dumbo sange jumden de beyawa şaya tuba ya çatı yudu cadı jevo Ade gane to çilan de sade de la bomba Ane jide de la joje so de se ke va jela cha Nanda goma chodu zuzangwa yeshe yaso serge lobo Rama jele zuna kamyo gumbo cheje jela cha Nanda goma chodu tembo tine dawe ya sendo jawa jela cha Tuje juna sebo suna ji nyame chenje kyola cha Wombo tuje jenamba tamje gembe donda Sona yende yazo je deshin shela cha Labe de cha tewa yu gebe nyeso le cha Jedu dunda juju shiyu kyola cha Jole jole la ya de la ba Chinge damba yede de gendu la ya cha Deva chena meja se jeva kusun sopa Range sene yonsu dene sanye temba Karma yare mameda yuma sepa shur Mena loya jimba dushe chena deda Zana de hamje sivayi Oba done genge Paranada chibe machule sibe son Prava Dravara Sho To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, nor of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, you, the completely and fully awakened one, Thou transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When the supreme among humans, I am supreme in this world, who are I then I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the three worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme sign, faith like the flowers, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, three worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of miracle qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that dharma which pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path of liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue and prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous acts. Perform only virtue. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A tower, a mirage, the flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits, may sentient beings obtain the rank of all seeing, subdue the pole of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by waves of aging, sickness, and death.
Minyambadanya Benga, Dungatanje Rabdi Shivar Chibenga, Mizubanande Barshiba Jati Shirati Paradu Chimbenga, Neba Tayanta Gati Gati Parasangati Buddhi Sova Sharibu Chandu Samba Samba Jimbo Dena Shirati Paradu Chiba Chiba Javu Dene Chukli Tingi Zindele Chende Chandu Samba Samba Baba Jereze Wanjula Lekto Shejawa Jine Lekto Veji Pu Dede Shino Dede Chedra Juji Temba Shindu Shiragi Paru Duchimba Samola Chepar Chade Deji Shepa Namjan Jesu Irano Jomden Dege Dege Jeka Zene Sedan Temba Shareda Debudan Janju Samba Samba Jumbo Baba Jereze Wanjula Tamjedan Tembe Koro Deda Ara Nidan Ama Yedan Jesa Chepe Jide Jomden Deji Sumba Lama
Page 11. Thus I have heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rashtriha on Vulture's Peak, together with the great assembly of monks and Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was totally absorbed in the concentration that examines all phenomena, called profound illumination. And at the same time, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahatattva, was engaged in the profound practices, the wisdom gone beyond, analyzing the five aggregates by nature and under the inspiration of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra spoke to the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahatattva.
Guides the venerable Shariputra saying, O Shariputra, whatever son of God of good family wishes to follow practice wisdom God beyond. Look at it like this, analyzing the five attributes like form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is preserved. In the same way, feeling, definition, information, and consciousness. Therefore, all phenomena are empty without characteristics. They are unborn and conceiving. They are neither impure nor free from impurity. They neither decrease nor increase. They are perfect and emptiness is no more, no feeling, no recognition, no confirmation, no comprehension. They have no eye, no ear, no nose, no body, no mind. Feel the eyes, no fear is mind. There are none of these all the way up to the sphere of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, no destruction of difficulties. There are none of these all the way up to there is no location, no extent destruction of location. There's no wisdom, no attainment, and no knowledge. Therefore, train Buddha, because there's no attainment. All Bodhisattvas don't use the Buddha. Because there's no maturity of mind, they have no reason. Passing good and beyond falsity, they live beyond that. All the Buddhas throughout the three times by relying on the system of beyond, fully and clearly awakened to a surpass, most perfect and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the wisdom God beyond, the mantra of great insight, yearning for and attachment, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known is the truth, for there is no deception. The mantra of the wisdom God beyond is proclaimed. Prayaka Yaki Yaki Parayaki Parasangaki Holy Soul. O Shariputra, this is how Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn profound wisdom God beyond. And the last one arose that consultation and praise the noble Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva Mahasattva, very good, son of good name. Exactly like that. The profound wisdom of God beyond should be practiced exactly as we have said. And then at the final last rules choice. When the blessed was accepted, the venerable Shariputra, the lower Bodhisattva, that whole gathering, and the word is God, man, and he got spirits. Their hearts full of joy, praise to the black one. So end the noble discourse of the efforts with them God beyond.
And the turbo subject conductor, Rangi Turbo Nampulan, Chubek, Ling the Chugu, some was said that, and that just a Chanju Sempe Jubal Juba, so the Muta, Rangi, Penatama to the charges to Gugu by in it to say you, and then Drayag Laga, and then Dronyeg Chawata, Chavi, you can watch a lot of Char Chorwa. Oh, Chavi, you can a lot of Charco and Nashing, down to Chanju Sempe Jubal Juba, so the Chanju Suda. Because a me use it. Oh, Tomas Pajamata, Chanju the Jabal love and colleagues and the Chanju Tartu body, and then Chanju go on to Togo, said not to say you the Chanju say. And then tell her to react to that Jabal lobby, the Lamna lobby, Chawach and the Brogo with Swedi, and the Chanju sent the Jabal Labas, that Chanju sent the Jabati, and the Rangi to some bottle for the Yams Lang, and then delay that Chanju level Chico your response.
It is Thursday now, and we resume the way of the Bodhisattva, the Bodhicharya Avatara. We mentioned the title, The Way of the Bodhisattva, and when we hear the title, it should occur to us what the practice entails. It is the very practice of the heirs to the Buddha, so-called the Way of the Bodhisattva. Now, when we have a plan to go to a place, we follow a route, and that route and all that traveling that route entails ought to occur to us as we reflect on our intention to travel. And so it is, the objective is to achieve Bodhi mind, Buddhahood. And so we anticipate the activities. They are the very precepts and trainings of the heirs to the Buddha, the Bodhisattva, and the objective is to reach Buddhahood, arrive at the destination. So it is that we listen, contemplate, and meditate. This is the very practice for the arrival at the destination of Buddhahood.
And go back and similar to Jarnet, that they to some Gonzung told me, Rangi Yams Langwindi, and it's about Jubas. What the other Pagi other Juba singing the Paring with the Mashaja, and the Juba the Rangi similar to Rangi similar Juba Nibudi. News of Mabba Chick to Trevor Chesona, and it's not Juba Jubas, and it's sick to Chango as one.
Entering the way of the Bodhisattva, the Bodhicharya Avatara, entering the Charya, the conduct of the Bodhisattvas is to engage in the training in Bodhi mind, Bodhicitta. After one listens and studies what one has learned, the lessons one has learned, one reflects upon, and then applies those lessons such that they become experiential through meditation. And this is the sense in which one enters the way of the Bodhisattva. It is an activity in this way that should be understood as integrating in the mind the very practices of the Bodhisattva, such that the training and the mind are not different, but indivisibly one. In the activities entailed in the way of the Bodhisattva, we think of 5 paths, 10 grounds, 6 paramitas, an additional 4 means of accumulating disciples. There are many counts of the various activities, but we ought to intend is the integration in body, speech, and mind of these activities. It's the very initiation in body, speech, and mind.
Oh yeah, that tendegi changajaga lam tigitla rangi semde jubar chebala tamu rangi juk tuya ki chajen road tamu godon saro to kanen song 거잖아. 아니 나도 다 간다 하게 다 tamongi junglo ke buyo nge junglo 교시 코알라 견도 통 교시게 로이도 통 nge jung 삼바데 깨바 마주나 아니 람 셴바데게 줄라야 깨야게 랑가도도 요 말해서
In the beginning of entering the path, such that the path arises in the mind, the very basis and starting point is renunciation. Renunciation is a repulsion toward cyclic existence, without which there are no subsequent paths.
Oh yeah, that 맞아 되겠다. 봐 오늘 시대야겠다. 배 대조 대진이가 메다와 마고 시야 되게 자진 감각 가리어 가오나 열었으나 당이 중글로 깨고 열은 게 중글로 깨야게 차진라. 아니 다 메다와 템바도 또 제네다 되게 마타나 아니 게 중글로 깨야 탑디요 말세단 되게 깨베 치돌라 담보 코알라 견도 따투고 거래. 그래도 따투발라 거 견도 통화는 견도 뭐신 거로 어디지도 모두 지리요. 그래서
Preliminary to renunciation is reflection on impermanence. There are other reflections to impermanence, imminent death, the preciousness of the human rebirth with its endowments and leisures. These are all for the purpose of developing renunciation, particularly the reflection upon impermanence, without which there will be no renunciation. One must first recognize the disadvantages of cyclic existence, comprehend them, and this is the starting point.
Oh yeah, 세상 대인들마다 담보 하나도 내가 더 맞나 뭐 담보 쭉사디 다 담보 코알 견도 통하고 그거래. 다 코알 견도 통화 제발이야. 다 도망이 담보 내송라. 견도 통. 되네 야 가래 리베체네. 아니 지단 지 코알 견도 통화. 어디 통화 이나 아니 땅에 중게 삼바생에도 강 깨투야게 차진 차단 상계열에서.
Now the first step is to recognize the disadvantages of cyclic existence. In order to recognize the disadvantages of cyclic existence, one begins identifying the faults of the hell realms, and then moving upwards step by step develops renunciation with these as basis.
다 근데 인도의 중개 삼바 승에디 다 간다조 단당의 중개 삼바의 진이 바 제시 잡용들 의 중개 삼바 승에디 아니 코알 견도 통내 다 라니 수수다다 라니 코하기 동해다 그래서 뭐시에는 코알 견도 통내 다 거의 동해들은 게 쇠도사 말에 거의 동해들 타르바 맞이나 탑면도 타르바치기 인삼베다 삼바디 끼었는데 아니 이 중개 삼바 제발해서
The mind that is renunciatory, in its definition and the explanations of it, is a mind that recognizes the disadvantages of cyclic existence, has experienced personally suffering, and recognizes that suffering characterizes cyclic existence, such that cyclic existence is intolerable, and only liberation from the bondage of cyclic existence is of interest anymore, such that one commits oneself to this liberation. Therein one has renunciation.
Oh, yeah, that is that you did give in it and you will look at us that says Shachobi or rest. But in the you do the matter, Tine, you jungle somebody that's so round two, load the round two big. And it's load the Keva in a jung. The load take around, Shen, but because Shen let the Keva in a Shen, Dungel and Narwa shit. 동행을 나와 들으니 단나 되기면 동행을 껴버 치고 또 동행을 껴버 치기 인사에다 삼바 깨운데 아니 인지 차버려 했어.
This then would be the measure of personal renunciation. It is self-referential, but when one turns the referent to others and recognizes that their suffering is intolerable for them and they must be protected from it, and when one commits oneself to protecting those others from that suffering, then this is the measure of compassion.
당이 중다 인진이 부디 로 카가서로 마다지 로 찍으로 삼로다 아니 디스수로 출때는 미과 제대 아니 콜이 전도 삼바 계속나 예중체 아니 디 시행을 로디가랑 시행을 봐 미미 아니 시행 동행을 껴봤다 동행을 태워 치고도 동행을 태워 마신 탑민도 사백을 로 깨운데 아니 닝지 차기와 해서
Do not consider renunciation and compassion to be distinct. They are the same. But when one is aware of oneself and one's personal interest in liberation from cyclic existence, this is renunciation. When the urge is to protect others from the suffering of cyclic existence, that it won't do if they continue, it won't do for them to continue to experience cyclic suffering. This is compassion.
Oh yeah, 딱 권영지 대법이 뭐 사부 친자네 심지어 탐제를 미비 심지어 탐제 동해의 태워 심지어 탐제 대화도 대마하고 대대가 담미고 숙청부 차한테만 심지어는 단위 방송고 이어매고 가다 심지어 간대지 있는 동해를 껴버 제백이 삼로 끼어는데 아니 닝지 친구도 기기 어려서 닝지 세면서 닝지 친구로 얘기를 해서
Refining this compassion such that it embraces all sentient beings and is the impulse to separate all sentient beings from suffering and to endow all sentient beings with satisfaction and contentment, whether that person is a stranger, a friend, or a foe, in any case and in all cases, where there is the impulse to separate them from their suffering and endow them with contentment. This is Mahakaruna, or immeasurable compassion.
다 된대닝지 전부 대기 다 심지어 탐제 동해를 채웠어. 다 이거 심지어 탐제를 미미 이 동해를 껴봐도 채워 되게 그 삼바 대기 다고 삼바디 깨는 핑계여 말 삼바 대기 다 거기 자와도 주고요. 주도 삼바 다고 간다. 심지어 탐제기 되는 간데서 주고도 수 주고도 주제 간데도 세용도 삼바 아니 다 가리키기 그래서나 다 심지어 탐제기 되는 탈침 뭐 두야 돼. 아니 산지지 고만 맞었나? 아니 산지 심지어 탐제기 되는 탈침 뭐 두고 매봐. 산지지 고만 톰나 아니 심지어 탐제기 되는 탈침 뭐 두고 유바. 된적이 내 주위 시험할 때는 거기다 산지지 고마생도 토부고도 마토는 탑면도 삼백에 삼바디 길이 아니 장주고 셈게 봐서 세고래서
With all sentient beings as the object and the impulse to protect each and every sentient being and to separate every sentient being from their suffering, where this mind arises, the mind alone is insufficient. It must be enacted. Towards its enactment, one considers who is capable of doing this? How is this to be done? The answer is that it is only conceivable with the achievement of Buddhahood. Without Buddhahood, there is no conceivable means for consummating the welfare of all sentient beings. Therefore, it won't do unless I achieve Buddhahood. No other means is there for the full, consummate bringing to welfare of sentient beings. With this recognition, then, and commitment to this Buddhahood, one has developed Bodhicitta.
yeah, that 된적이 장주고 셈디 아니 된적이 bessim제 탐제가 산지에 마살로 꼬버 책이 삼바디 장주고 셈으로 왔다 디 아니 랑이 깨워 넘바 랑이 둘레 정말 깨운데 아니 무슨 깨봐 아니 뭐 승진이 여러 멤버스도 주베셈 제가 멤버스 장주심 담보지리 아니 멤버스 깨봐 어디에서
Bodhicitta then is this the impulse to achieve Buddhahood, but for the well-being of all sentient beings. In its first arising, this impulse to do this, it is aspirational in form. There is aspirational bodhicitta and there is engaged bodhicitta.
다 된적이 장주 셈디다 도마 깨버 제가 탑라 마게바 깨버 제가 탑라 안에 주주고 달리고 당고도 가도 가다 시에스면 누구 당고 숨들에 해서
For the development of the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, where it has yet to arise, the first three topics, the first three chapters of the way of the Bodhisattva, which we have concluded. Where the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, has arisen for its preservation, that it never decline, the fourth, fifth, and sixth chapters.
Oh, yes, Chanju Sem Chesan, the Chobala Juba said, Chanju Sembe Tomba Chetsane, Chanju Sembe Chobala Lovechido, and the Dobas Hungu, the Dobas Hungu Chobane, and the Chanju Sembe Chobala Laburo, the Lavia Tap, Tambo, Tambo Chobas, Chanju Sembe Dobas Keba, Tumor Chebe Tap, that Hechi did, Yubaina, and Joba Song to Yubata, make Joba Song to Mebegi, and then you Shiba with the shading of resonance.
With the arising of the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, one begins the enactment of the mind of enlightenment through the formal adoption of the Bodhisattva vows that then initiate the training. One takes these vows formally through ritual ceremony, and then the training in the precepts begins. For the preservation of the mind of enlightenment and the Bodhisattva vow, where it is formally taken, conscientiousness is employed, without which there will be no preservation and enactment of the vows, without which those will flag, thus the fourth chapter of the way of the Bodhisattva.
Oh, that doesn't Liu Shiba Payu and the Liu Nanadang, the Pau Kamukola, Dorden Geshi Nise, and Dorden the Chinsawaji, Geshi Nanadang, the Kawale Dersna. Ah, she did go about it. Nothing is a new to the Giopamba. Giopamba, that's doing Chanju Sembe Tobatama, and she doing number you was that subject to your response.
In the fourth chapter begins with the summary presentation of conscientiousness and is followed by the extensive presentation of conscientiousness. We have arrived at the verses describing the manner in which, with the abandoning of the well-being of others, the Bodhisattva vow and the mind of enlightenment is lost.
Oh, yeah, that. A woman with Chanju Sem Jay. That Sem Jay and Juba Chanju Sem that Jobala Labor, that Jobala Labos, this Talavia Chidu, Joba Sem Diata, Kandar Manyama, a temple network. But Sem Jebot by Nyabayina, and it never carriore. That's Chanju Sem the Tangshawaina, and it never carriores. That would share that Juju that city by Shubin. Then Chanju Sambolo Tuan and Chiwate. That Dini Chanjuna, Semji Guni, Tala Mans, or that subject again, so it's what is
Where aspirational bodhicitta arises, it must be followed by the enactment of bodhicitta. Where bodhicitta has arisen, it must be preserved and made stable and firm. The disadvantage of ever allowing the mind of enlightenment to falter is described in the 8th verse here, which I will now recite. The 8th verse on page 54. This failure for the Bodhisattva is the gravest of all downfalls, for should it ever come to pass, the good of every being is thrown down.
Oh, yeah, that's Chanju Sem Jetsane, and it Joba Tombalang, and it Tombamosum was a Tomba Yaber Cheva Yina, and it's Chanju Sembala Karesna, Chanju Sembala Hajan, Tombadi, Chanju Chiteta, Chansam Tombe Zadung. So Zadung Chagres, and it Hajan Tombadi Never Chivo. And it don't want Chivo, Chanju Sembegita, Yabag and Yaba Chisho. 하는 지고도 맞으면 치료도 자기 요래스 어디 때야 대달라다 직 담보대 되니 전주 선발라 동에 나면 지와대 스 담보니 되기 나 전주 선발 도마땅와 이나 아니 예바 가지 요래서 좀다 아니 자동기 그래서 다 지듯이 좀 그래서
where the Bodhisattva vow has formally been taken, but then allowed to decline. Verse 8 describes this as the gravest of all downfalls. It is the gravest of all downfalls, the most heaviest of downfalls, for it is a root downfall. The failure for the Bodhisattva is the gravest of all downfalls. So grave, in fact, it is a root downfall.
야, 나 지금 오늘 지나다 전주선배 자동 접게 아니 예지 시도 가서 다 제시 제고 다이네 이마지 늘려 지고 알레 빼제 찍을 때 강가도 따따따따 대기면 가시다 디메도 괜다 이마지 빼제 때 아니 그 자동 되게 제시 제주체 다다당하고 자동 타마 접게 받이 자주 그 샘동에 자동 들에 얘네 고바이나 저 고바디 따와 로바즈면 나 로버트 따와진도 제바 따와진도 짐바테 아니 자동 직지요 자동 뒤니 아니 전주 선발라 다 자동 나는 배 꿀디 마상나야 아니 자동 계획 도바 자동 계획이 여바 인도 아니 전주 선발라 도바데 지와다 어디게 되는 지고래 소로죠.
There are 18 root downfalls, 46 transgressions. Whether or not I recall at present each and every one, I don't know. So I'll refer to a text later on and we'll go through them one by one. But among those 18 root downfalls, what is the 18th? Abandoning the mind of enlightenment, and what may be the 10th, holding to wrong view. Both of these, regardless of whether the four constant fetters are present or not, constitute a root downfall, gravest of downfalls.
Oh, yeah. 자동 심바들라 꿀지 시 참고래서 꿀지 시 마산의 자동 기기 말해서 아 자동 접게 받아 구바들라 꿀지 시 그네 마산 그 간다 자주 셈 동하다 아니 간다 자주 셈 라게 냠버 제바이나 아니 감산 자동 기기 여바다 아니 로다 첸도 제바이나 자동 기기 감산 꿀지 좀 참고고 계본인데 그 하장이 지워 된대기 전에 자동 장가 제기 요래 제가 대대 장야가 자게 아니 가다다 다뭐 꿀직 세대 때 도마스나 한 꿀직 지금 말해서 꿀직 세대 그 꿀직 희리 명제 납샤나 아니 그 간다 꿀직 갈 장고는 신기로와 이리도 뭐 꿀직 시 장야 되라다 끝나 뒤어라 가도 꿀직 시는 담보 뒤면 되다 아 꿀직 시는 담보 뒤 네발라 당도랑네 쥐봐 잡잖아 다동 중요하게 실라 당도랑 쥐봐 저봐 이지요래 아니 되네 당 뭐자 여버다 체여봐 뭐자 체매다 체여서 저봐 뭐자 체여다 체매 매버 체바디 자동 찍래 아니 딱 지나네 배 가시 구바세요. 다들 가시 배 네바 총알라. 네바라 배 네바데 파게 디 네바 이메촌에 맞다 와라게 배 셈데. 간다 셈고 돈도 배 네바 여바나지 롱제 받더라. 하고 숨지서. 다들 네바라 니메도 맞다 왔지 어디. 어디시디 아니 구딕시디레스. 서비스하고
이 최대 말로빠데
아
최바르 대바 말로빠
제가 대바 말로 말다가 디소다 네벌 당돌렘 당돌랑 되바
남들랑
직체 아니 뭐자 체매 이제 아니 디네 예발라 가와도 그발로 소바 제바 숨바체 시바데 예발라 니미스 마다와티 어디시 창소나 자동차기로 와 대시 강한 로마 찍 맞잖아 아니 자동 말에 이제
And the Shiva the younger.
예발라 니미스 마다와 마타디 사님 자동 지시제로 고 다당이 장가 잡힌 되게 제가 자동 지시제로 와 그래서 뭐네 거랑 가도 지시 되는 거
These four constant fetters for all but the 18th and the 9th of these 18 root downfalls are required for the transgression to be a root downfall. But in the case of the 18th, abandoning the mind of enlightenment, and the 9th, holding to wrong view, in these two cases, the four constant fetters needn't all be present, yet nevertheless, these transgressions are root downfalls. They are very grave indeed. And so they are counted among the 18 root downfalls. Now, the four constant fetters, to list them for you so that you understand them, they are first voluntarily doing as one wishes, two, shamelessly and without remorse, third, approving of that which is faulty, and fourth, not seeing faults as faults. These four make for the four constant fetters. We will go into these in the enumeration too of the Simla Sinjo. Later in the explanation of the root downfalls, we will go into this. More on these later in the explanation of the 18 root downfalls and the transgressions, and then the four constant fetters.
Oh, yeah, that under the Zaduni de la Deshe, Zadun Sanju Sem, that under Zaduniga Goma, that under the Zadun Jojeba, Sanju Sem Tomati, and Zadun Shenles and Jiu, the Yeva Chewa Yuba, Junzela. And it chick the Kundik Samasana Yang, Sadun Jiggy over the chick. How's one? Chick this one. Oh, that in any Padar Sanju Sembagi, Sanju Sem Tawa Yina, any never Chimbo Yuba Karsana, any Shindu Yamdu Yores, Shindu Yabaina, any Tako Chanju Shindu to Yig Duba, in Yamdu, the Yabaina, and it's Chanju, Jama Chanju, Rangi. Topje Chanju miyu to be your marchana tea, and that Chanju Sembege, that Chavenan, the Hajang member. She was the child response.
There are these two, the 9th of the 18 root downfalls and the 18th, abandoning the mind of enlightenment. These two do not require the four constant fetters to be present in order to be nevertheless root downfalls. The 18th, we haven't got to go into both now. You can look at the 18th, the root downfall of abandoning the mind of enlightenment. It is heavier than the others. Not all four of the constant fetters are required for it to be the downfall that it is. Abandoning the mind of enlightenment is the great fault that it is, for the reason that with it, the well-being of sentient beings declines necessarily, for the aspiration to achieving the well-being of other sentient beings necessarily flags at the same time. There will be no achieving of Buddhahood when this condition for it falters, so it is considered very grave.
Oh, yes. 제가 대대 인도서부터 계산 아주 강한데 시야겠다. 계산 어제 뭐만 이거면 이마이마 아주 좀 시인데 되니 좀 장주 셈니 냠내기 뭐지 장주 셈니 제부 라도 죽고다 신도 죽고 니 셈바 세상 따뜻한데 되나라 되니 좀 봐서 장주 되니 좀 봐다 신도 되니 좀 봐서 된다 인지 비슷한 예보고 거 맨나 아니 다들 신도의 냠다랑도 냠세 고아들의 고요 세상 뒤인데 윤번이 되고 몽신 어떤 이게 장주 셈께 저되나 랑 장주 톱도 dum바지다 신 산제가 장주로 건도 dum바니요 dum바니보디 신도 뒤에 dum바데 뭐를 끼워 신도 뒤에 dum바데 제소랑도 뒤에 dum바데 끼워 dum바니 제도 신도 뒤에 dum바고를 끼워 봐봐 세상 다 제마 장주 미유 주부도 장주 뒤에 dum베 미유 장주의 수랑 장주의 뭐도 아니 신 장주로 거가 최고로 와 세상 다다 신도 냠바이나 장주쌤 냠도 장주쌤 냠바이나 신도 뒤에 dum바데 냠도 이 냠바이나 딱 거기 랑도 뒤에 걸로 땅도 요 말때 이내 랑도 뒤에 걸로기 미유도 그래요 말 그래서 제가 거시 다다 장주쌤 dum바 지워 임바다 아니 멤버 임을 좀 제로 어떻게 쓰고 해서 너무 참아봐 야
Last week and the week before, I described for you 2 aspirations, 2 bodhicittas, 2 results. And these are first the 2 results, these are critical, particularly these 2 aspirations. That you bear these in mind is important. The aspiration to personal Buddhahood is 1. The aspiration toward the well-being of others is the other. Both need to be understood. Understood the way in which, where the aspiration to the well-being of others falters necessarily to that has ramifications for the aspiration to personal Buddhahood. For it is in the process of developing bodhicitta, one is first motivated by the aspiration to the well-being of others. Following this aspiration, the aspiration to personal Buddhahood arises in this sequence. But in the realization of the result, the order is reversed, and one first achieves personal Buddhahood, which is followed by the completion of the well-being of others, the establishment of others in Buddhahood. But see how it is then that should the aspiration to the welfare of others decline, then necessarily too the aspiration to personal Buddhahood will be affected. So it is then that the abandoning of the mind of enlightenment is considered so heavy, its occurrence to be so problematic.
뭐야 다 너무 많다는 다 너무 땅에 이미 되었다 도나가 스타 시즈 망고야 다 이게 뭐고 같이 다 이게 그냥 망고 차려 다 되네 다 너무 땅이나 다 너무 되려서 안 되는 거니 신도냐 보겠다 자와 되지 다 되네 자주쌤 다랑 다디 단다디 라니기 다 수수 신기 게임 맞죠 수수랑게 다 너무 송 투사 말에 아니 다 단주쌤 도바 라게 전주쌤 도바 캐라는다 자세 줘발 람마투 바다 아니 지 된제 수수고 빼다 손남 맞춰가 된제 왕 도바 땅와 있는 예바 유바 되지 다 되네 디워들 가리어스나 아니 랑게 개바 신기 방을 발제 체네 아니 도바 제발라 발제 제바다 되네 중앙 이나양 아니 예바 가리어레스나 다디 예바 유야들아 아니 다디 치티오 마트다 치오 마트다 간식 기지 자면 디 손남 바지 개체바 샘진 털라 매주베 디 년도 Intro that Matame to the Mutame get it. Being into Mutame, all the city, Mutame, Matame.
Now, should the Bodhisattva vow be abandoned, and in a circumstance where there is no interference to another's practice, in a situation wherein one disheartened concludes, I cannot accomplish the well-being of others, I haven't the merit sufficient, the ability to actually enact the way of the Bodhisattvas, this is a downfall. The downfall, too, of a scenario wherein one interferes with another is described in the 9th verse. And anyone who, for a single instant, halts the merit of a Bodhisattva, wanders endlessly in evil states because the welfare of all beings is reduced.
Oh, yeah, that be the Kashiki. What is the Kashiki? Some there is some party cake pass. That is the same Kaya room, she can't. That's some Jane Kangaji. And then Chanju Sambala, Chanju Sim Care. And you remove my imba. Kiji Samshik. Page Chanju Sim combat, Keba, Party Cheba Inayang. And then Simjing turn a member Juarez. And take Tebu carrying was saying from Madame by younger race. I think they Kadu the show there.
And any sentient being who, for a single instant, halts the merit of a bodhisattva, the merit of a bodhisattva in meditation upon bodhicitta, in the development of bodhicitta, for a single instant, no matter the length of time, whether it long or a single instant, wanders endlessly in evil states because the welfare of all beings is reduced. The result of such inaction is to wander endlessly in evil states. This is a direct explanation of the verse.
And dig that dig that shank, Hasa shanky, and it's Chanju with Sambalaya, and it's Chanju Sim Keber Chebata, but never Chebala, Kiji Samshik, Cake Chebayina, and it's Simjing a ton of member, Kadi and member June, and member Jurwe, dig Tributella, and some of the member Kadi Jungre, the Kundi, and that did not do. Rabdu Shiva, number never Churugi dos. Oh, Dinalata, Lord mean Yeserve.
Young get you some?
Rabdu Shiva, number never Chorugi do.
I'll show
be Jad go.
listen.
Oh, this is what Namik does. See the student Rapsi Namik does not was. Rabbi Shiva number Nebet dos. That in Chorusi,
when any individual interferes with the Bodhisattva's development of bodhicitta and preservation of bodhicitta where it has arisen for even a moment, this because it reduces the welfare of all beings, causes that person to wander endlessly in evil states as a consequence. Now, the scriptural support for this is drawn from the conviction, the magical emanation of conviction and perfect pacification sutra.
Oh, yeah, that Dodi Kung Tango, and that of the Karesna, that's Chanju Sembala, Chanju Sem Yamlenchi, Sanju Sem, Jula J. Sanik, Sanju Sem, any Yamba Chebata, any pocket never Chebala, Parji Chebaina, any like cookie. The Sanju Sem, taking on the corner Tamanashi, and the Sanju Sem, look, Sanju Sem Town Yina, and Kotaranga Goma Kelam, the Sanju Sem, Semje Tamjik to Sanji Goba Tops, Gobala Goba Chigi, Susu, that she would kill Tamja. Yeah, but it's just the same J. Kellan and use the job of love is Kellan Savar, what that is not Kellan, but the and it's same J call a trouble Majeba. But Lutamba and Coca Kanda Tun Susu sang Chawa the Madruenza, member Juvas, using Chixet. That chiglet, any that Pena Kasa Kaya Roma Chigi, any Pagakanda said Chawa Chebala, any to cover Jebu. 아니 토리 냠바 쳐봐다 아니 뱅에서도 깨워 지기 주나 아니 전주 샘백이 깨워디 아니 다 간다 샘제 배 장매 받아 대대기 된다 아니 샘제바 자와 지기 유도 아니 하장이 냠바 쳐와 봐 어디대 배도는 수고요래 손
So this scriptural support describes a Boddhisattva, an individual who develops the mind of enlightenment and preserves that mind, and an instance where another interferes with the development and preservation of the mind. And as I said before, in one circumstance, a person has committed oneself, made a promise to establish sentient beings in Buddhahood, committed oneself, made the promise to do this, and should one then renege upon this promise and not enact their commitment to this promised goal, then the consequence is the wandering in hell realms. Now, another scenario is described in which another person, in their activities, in their investment and commitment to the well-being of others, is interfered with.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. Most there the Chanju Sembeg, that Jabala, Parje Cheba. And it's Chanju Sabana, that Jabba Jibat down like Jimbatama to what they Parje Cheba Yina. And could be Jibut Hazang Dungi Mangu Yongu with them, but they let ten that sugar carrying yours, not this Chawati sugar carrying yours, not. And then around that you Yamlen to do Kansa Suina, Chanju Samba singing, Chanju Sembe Jabba di, and never members. Kana never member Chanju Sembe Jabba, Chanju Samba Tabaka Indu, and it's simply to turn Jabba Jabba. Takanda Jabba the best. Nyamba yor, that can't take Kanda Jabata. Chawata Kangata, Tuba Manguch and Chigi Indu, and it did Simjig stuck about Jujuta, and it daughter Kato Ibla Sona, then and it got Simjan Shana Tonjun Chebata, and it's Jana the Lake Chebaina, and Pajong with the Chanju Samba Jimbaina, and round that Jibutunga to Yunguba. The sure thing your response.
Described here is an instance of interference with the activities of a bodhisattva. The activity of a bodhisattva may be in their performance of generous charity. To interfere with this will have the consequence of lasting suffering. What this implies is, for us, because bodhisattvas employ their methods masterfully and are engaged in the well-being of others, their actions take many forms, many shapes, many appearances. And if we make a mistake and interfere and harm another who seems to be inferior, we may well be interfering with a bodhisattva in their activities, in which case we will suffer consequences as a result.
제가 장주 선배 줘봐들 타요 말 심지게 된 제발라 장주 선배가 두번 장매봐 근데 열에 제가 다지당 아주 되게 루기 여바 콩데 가서 아주 산다 망제 도 잡류 아니 좀 되게 깨럽 다주나로 루기 망보다 되게 열에 다 되게 고 시에네 두주 망보도 그래 제가 되게 고 한다다 장주 선배 줘봐 타매봐 내가 아주 고대오제 시에봐이나 내가 아주 다 용해하게 말아도 대바티 원도 제가 있나요? 내가 아주 이 용다라 답변은 벤젠 나루바가 틀로바 당고지도 아니 배 하장이 미 도년보 아니 배냐 메타자는 사드냐수 주리 메타자는 사드냐 드레스 통 아무들 아니 그런 게 미게 뭐도 저번에 뭐들이 두 삼도서만 그 저번에 뭐 이라고 저번에 뭐 저번에 뭐 이라 그냥 그 도바도서 아딩에 셈나가 하고도 미리 괜찮아 도서도 양그 지배 교량니수 가고 신기 유스 하고 유스라고 그래요. 그 들러보면 더 벗어서만 들러봐 이라고. 그냥 거기 줘봐들 따는 배 두자전에 집어가지고 전주선에 주바생들하고 남주 망해버려. 간주만이 된 것에서 나눠도 다 뒤윤 지소 나와. 미기 줘봐 년마다. 아니 지금 미기 간다를 더 년마다 줘봐 년마다 아니 지금 가리여봐 있네. 되잖아야다. 다들 통중 남주 땅와 있나? 아니 가정모두 자주 선바들이 지금 있나? 아니 라마다. 가장이 예바 전부들이 이리 아니 다 봐요 때네. 아니 줘봐 되게 까투고 요래 손으로.
So it is that the activities of the Bodhisattvas take myriad forms. Their manifestations and their engagement are multitudinous. Accounts of the forms they take are drawn primarily from the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish and the Jataka tales. There are many of them. There's no end to the number of myriad forms these bodhisattva activities take. Here in this tradition, often the story is told of the Mahasiddha Naropa's first meeting with who would be his teacher Tilopa, and his first impression being of an ugly person of the worst sort of character, just sitting where they were, frying fish and gobbling them up. And Naropa approached and said, Tilopa, you're the worst sort. And Tilopa said, I'm the worst sort. And then Naropa reflected for a minute and said, Tilopa, or rather, you are a weird character. And Tilopa said, I am a weird character. And Naropa said, you are Tilopa, I am Tilopa. And it began in a misrecognition based upon the appearance of a person. And this happens too in our ordinary activities in the world, in which we judge a person by their appearance, and we make a first impression, have our first impression of what appears to be a bad sort of character in a person, and then we disregard or disrespect the person. But to avoid the consequences that this may have for us, we employ conscientiousness.
제가 그런 것도 제시돼요. 밤에 바위반이 뒤지대 밤에 반이 치워대. 제가 바위 봤으니 뒤지나시 제 냠슬랑 거래서 가도 있는 바위 굽에 뒤지지어봐 있나는 알아 가고 얘기를 쌓아 전부 랭겨와. 치워대도 순간하도 가는 다 빵제로. 수인에 다 치워 먹고 치워서 배 마요야 제대로다 나도 탑시에 망부지기를 조성 당기를 아니 말해야 갑자기 가리는 지기로 방향 탑시로 어디 나시다 바위에 봤으니까 배주 당사대 아니 나라도 다 고승 저백에 남샤대 바위부터 송고 뭐 제가 따단다 때 나도 미신을 따당 터네 아니 미신 파죠 모두 직접을 한게 나와로 맞추면 저바 제바다 저바 네바 가져 입어이나 양콜이야 직하게 간다 랑게 따주 만들바다 아니 콜 동중 제비 깨는 데는 하는 예바 첨부 여러서는 되게 예바 마요 치도라 바요 그도는 송데 들리지냐 내 쪽으로 해서
So I said that it is that conscientiousness is likened to Amrita. Conscientiousness is a nectar, negligence is death. Where one comes to possess a nectar, an Amrita, one holds to it and protects it. But where death approaches, all avoid death. None wish for death. People spend money to avoid death. They'll do anything to prevent death. So one must, in body, speech, and mind, at all times employ conscientiousness to be well guarded so that one does not make a mistake based on a mere appearance of a person and conclude that they are of bad character when in fact they are not. So one guards oneself from negative consequences of misjudging a person through their conscientiousness.
Oh yeah, that 아니 제주고 단다데 진짜 시작의 대샤. 방아도 네네 네시오도 아주 네 스타스 꾼루지. semjungda semjung modu xiudos gongjian da jichedan kechimbu shira yora chedan di tamong ado digi semjung ju zaji yor da semgi kordula semgi chawachi digu roba chinyen jodela ado semgi kari chigido semdi ade sungudo semdi dani baga chowadan dani dushi digu lega chedan kola ngoshen semjung of zaji de ngoshen ba ina 아니 제는 아주 된마다 시신이다 신화다 고여바다 망고 지시제도 아니 남산하다 자르투가 임보르제다 딩고는 심중되게 드린 아주 장가들이 시작이 있어 니네마 심중도 좋아하다 군도도 마바하지 그래서 어르시 도나 아니 딱 정말 준주부 지시제도 좀 봤댔어 그때 운영에 개발 요소를 세상에 디체도 아니 심중 시에바시 된셔 오비스도 보려는 게
For the verses from the way of the Boddhisattva and their explanation, we will conclude here because I want to momentarily present to you cognitions and mental factors. 51 mental factors are described in such a presentation. The principal cognition and the accompanying mental factors. How is the mind engaged? These mental factors include feeling, discrimination, and others. And as we understand them, the understanding will better inform our understanding of conscientiousness and vigilant and introspection, and also excitement and lethargy, and the way in which they interfere with meditation. So today I'll list these mental factors, feeling and others, for later on as we proceed in the way of the Boddhisattva, it will make your understanding the text come more easily. Yeah.
아주 장가도 나보인다. 장가도 건전 저런 헛간 티슈네 하고 그랬어. 장가도 얘도 난 저만 거래를 지시게 된다고 생각해요.
Just a sense again, So I'll list these mental factors, and if you were to note them, that would be useful for your reference.
Oh, yeah, that 당고대로 군중아서. 군중아도 군중아지 군중아도 나다 장가도 가지 당고도 좋아하지. 되잖아. 야, 좋아지. 아니 뒤시지. 아니 셈바지. 아니 일하체 바지. 아니 렉바스. 어디가들 군중가서 그래서.
The first are the 5 ever-present factors. These are feeling, recognition, intention, mental engagement, and contact.
Would you please repeat that?
Feeling, recognition, intention, mental engagement, contact.
이 군중가 셈 가와 내가 셈 가와 제가 가르치나요. 나 군중가 냠도 고고 열에서.
In every instance of cognition, these 5 factors are ever present.
이까 군중가서 도요 군중가서 영화도 군중들 막 다들 데가 군중가서라 아니 가르도. 다 군중가서라 유응딩아 그리고 군중가서 유행아 윤이 봐가 유행아도 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 가도 막 내 집에 주는데 막 영화도 남았어 그만 소화를 되게 봐 저거 보는 땡인데 스타고 소화도 있는데 소화도 진짜 꼰도 유행아도 당하게 하면서 네가한테도 유행아도 뒤도와다 되면 강수 받아서 저 영화로 내 남았으면 돼 안으로 모르는 뭐 대체가 유행아 받아 장가 받아 되면
다들 이런 지시라. 균반당 매반당 잼반당 땡에진나 시아라.
장가대로 어때 디나민도 그게 거기 같이
지시죠. 그래서 뭐셔가
저기 좀 장가대 잡혔다 유행아 같은 게 되는 유행아들 쓰기도
The 5 determining factors.
나가 당서 균바래 봐
어로 균반 매반 잼바 라샤가
아주 땡이죠
5 determining factors. 5 determining factors in aspiration, belief, mindfulness, stabilization, understanding.
참 맞지. 나 근데 맞지. 되는 뭐지 제시죠. 그래서 쳔바도 장가드나 자매도 이게 소화도 많지 제시한다.
맞지.
아니 제일 고박에
레비요. 소라라 이게나. 레비요.
오래 니네다도 어다마기 간 마디 제시라도 소화도 동에서 봐도 되게 뭐지. 다 소화 들린다. 소화가 이어와도 되겠다. 다디네 소화들 얘나 소화들 대두다 지단 들으셔. 소화들라. 소화 대화도 동에다 따뇨 숨제와
너.
소화들 동에다 따뇨 숨제. 다텔라 풍부라비지 거는 채나 소화들라. 뇽아 숨대서 대화도 동에다 따뇨 숨뭐 되게 콩들다가 되기도 되는. 소화들도 따뇨 숨다 하는 되기도.
We'll begin actually with divisions of feeling. Feeling is of 3 kinds: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. These are in their experiential aspect in the aggregates of 3 kinds. The experience that is satisfactory, pleasant, unpleasant, and neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Neutral.
야, 딱 근데 소화생 소화고랑 그다 뭐도 가지나 뇨에 남바진들라 소화세 고랑 이제 안에 될라야다 소화 대화 뇨와 동해 뇨와 또 동해 많이 받아 대화 많이 받 was go to the see Java Kirishata. That's one.
So then feeling is defined by the experiential aspect, which will be pleasant or unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant.
Oh, yeah, that's dinner. Corona to see Jadano Chavina. There was in the country, there was Kang Gagana, Chever Dubas. Also, Kang Gana, so the Kogi Beauty Park Garden, and tribute to Zamba to Chever Dubas, Della Devace. Dunga send it Kang Chever Kang Suzuka, you. Canadian on the Chua in a tribute to me, no, tribute the Trevor Tebacilla, Dungas. So young that the Jawarta. That Dunga that there were Kaya, my Kang Chunaya, Niga, Deber Minjuati, and Parmano, Ceres.
To define the pleasant feeling. A pleasant feeling is defined so, where satisfaction is interrupted and one wishes to experience again the satisfaction, where one's pleasure is interrupted and one wishes again to experience the pleasure. This is a pleasurable feeling. This defines a pleasurable feeling.
Oh, yeah, that they do Daniel Sumudella, and the careers, Lusu Korjek, they do Daniel Sum, Samso Korjek, they do Daniel Sumi, religion, true your response.
Wherever displeasure arises, the desire to be parted from the displeasure is unpleasant feeling. Where the experience has neither the pleasurable feeling nor the painful feeling, it is neutral. Now, these feelings or sensation that are pleasurable, unpleasurable, or neutral apply to physical sensations and mental sensations, so that there are 6 in total.
Oh, yeah, that other little courses, some courses, that so I did do Daniel Sumi, but Chigwache. In a Kunik Luso, the Simzogi, Cheber, the Karikon, the Chigres, Nana, on shake court to Chumwag. That to carry you by Nadigidilla, Luso Corsik, the Wase. Ye number Shebe, court to Chumwag, so carry you by Nadilla, and in Semzo Corsik, so I saw Cheber the Chigres.
Mental sensation and physical sensation have the same 3 aspects: the pleasant, the unpleasant, and the neutral. But the difference between the 2 lies in where the physical sensation is caused by sensory faculties. The sensations that are mental are caused by mental consciousness or the mental faculty.
Oh, yeah, that kind of Luso, the Semzo, saying the call Kader, Manando, Ombuchi, Ombubi, Yu Chen, that's what they were younger doing, younger time, your Tinaji Yiji. Yiji number 7 Laya, and so what they were doing, Daniel Sum, says a call. The Luso Kojik, that the Choa Yondan to see Jadan, Tenderu, says that dine 저 니버지만 봐봐 이날 딱 미기 넘버 10 코드 좋아 미기 넘버 10 여러분 미기 넘버 10 미기 넘버 10기 아니 딱 미기 넘버 10 코드 중요하겠다 저와도 다녔으면 될라야 아니 루소 코르제스 밍타 그래 밍타 그래스 밍디 루소 코르죠 어디 맹디 토그래 제산다 디 콜 맹디 따고에 윤센도 가르쳐 버렸으나 아니 루지 오보 탐제라 딱 강만에 건디버도 간다 차베 윤센을 제네 아니 콜 루즈 코르제스 맹디 따버래 이나시 오보 시행하라야 찍고 잡어래서 오보이 넘버 10가 시행하 여러 신시
In contact with any external physical object, the sensation thereby caused in the faculties of vision and the rest are the physical or bodily sensations. The physical or bodily feelings, differing from the mental sensations that are informed by mental faculty, which will be no differently pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. But a second question would follow. For instance, in the case of vision as a faculty, visual consciousness is physical sensation, as are the other faculties, for they are the faculties that pervade the physical body. They are therefore the physical faculty informed sensations.
오늘 이제 장가지 별로 자게잖아. 이제 대시리 별로 제도 제가 드린 대샤기 대샤 안에 제마에디 별로도 쉬고 싶어도 잡는 기용 담보 장가지 따다 영향식이 있어. 안 디네르르르 대시 소와 뒤시 남아든지 안 되는 말씀 좀 주지지. 아니 선중 주지 되게 아니 쌤이 코드를 정확하게 지기 위해 아니 쌤이 코드를 따당지 간에 지금 어디게 돼. 이 빠지는 차단 대시 여러 차단에 둘다 제면하는 쉬어야지. 아니 드린 대샤 아니 다 드린 것도 쌤 심중 시에고야 돼 가서다 드린 아주 맹간지 침바이다 맹간나는 미주다 강에 통다 검지에 개침부시라 통에 디삼었다는 용이 이내 담보할 장가도 되어서 장가도 날래면도 언제를 잡초 제에서
No, I photocopied a text here and brought it with the intention to list for you 51 mental factors. Next week I'll bring, but in fact, in this text, the list isn't complete. And we began with an explanation, but my intention wasn't to go into the explanation here, but rather to give you the list of the mental factors. Now, next week, I'll be sure to bring the text with the list of mental factors. The reason for a moment we have begun to explore cognitions and mental factors is that we went to the hospital today and the hospice center and found patients there reinforced my impression of the importance of meditation. And then I intended to give you a good list of the mental factors, but we'll do that next week and we'll conclude here.
롱바 튕긴 저 보인데 근데 롱바나 미가가 로침보체 아니 내가 치료 루기 고주도 싫어 맞도네 아니 체를 못해 안데서 코도 강에 퇴배도 왔어 아니 지금 송아저 장 검도 제외나 아니 시우지 편도 영상에서 말하는 소화 정수 대신에 이 선종도 지시 잡았었는데 시우지 들이지 명인데 대스 스타를 팔로데 팅마선스 안들이 대시하는 것도 저한테 지고 주셨습니다.
So here the infrastructure is such that you may grow old and be well cared for. You may not be able to move very much or to be physically active, but you may nevertheless live a long time. And I see that, and then I'm certain that to use that time to recite mantra and to meditate would be very constructive. This is the strong feeling I had in the hospice center. And so I thought to bring a presentation of cognitions and mental factors. The text that I would refer to didn't come out just right, so this will have to wait till next week.
Yeah, I think the Diane several major so
if anything is unclear, then we can use our Q&A to clarify those things. That's my hope. We can use our Q&A that way.
Yeah,
that's it. I had two questions. One was kind of clarifying what it means to abandon Boddhisattva. So maybe just two examples that came to mind is like, because I heard that Boddhisattva is the intention to free all sentient beings. But like if I'm talking to somebody, I give my full attention to the person in front of me, and I'm intent on just that person and not thinking of other sentient beings. So I just want to clarify if there's still Boddhisattva there. And the other is like, I'm doing my taxes. And my mind is like completely absorbed in doing the taxes and definitely not thinking of other sentient beings. And so is there Boddhisattva there? Is there how is that?
And Jangchuk isim pangwetse kandisigres and you chiva ningdön de yin and pena pe niyo check Negoyala and a Jangchuk isim seridi and a simchin tamche sangi kopang la goparja nye and a chigin sabe samadiro yene mitcheki negidon la mitcheki yobache and a mid delaya and a sim say chick to kongi kari love the yume and a kongi karisamatan the yume delani sim say chick to dene they do ne simchin tamche some of the korgimendo bansan yilashe cheve yudi niche they do and the Jangchuk isim pang rogre chikje then anybody chacha shungi che yero sosugi che go gro and che si gap the tambala ye che si gap dan la and sim che chik to and ne de yogore ro and they do and shendon the some core samendo and the Jangchuk isim di pang rogre and tong rogre
Jangchuk isim tong le che senida that tambo Jangchuk isim tong se tambo Jangchuk isim su gedu ni simje tamje be tuen chigi simje tamje dungele chawa chigi dewa da temba chigi di temba chebe chido 아니 등알아 탑 보고도 탑 가르도선 산지 고만 톱나 치투도 삼백 삼바데 계주 자주스 깨바레스 그냥 시간 봐 되듯이 잡살해서 다 땅도 좀 방에 섬지게 된 치투사 말에 땅에 말한 게 켈레만 나시게 다 치투사 말은 용사 말에 삼무도 요 땅이나 자주스 냐 봤다 되듯이 잡 더도 기가면 요레스 어디 땅부 더 땅부들 낸 지었어
The measure for the mind of enlightenment having been abandoned is for the commitment informed in this way. All sentient beings must experience lasting contentment. They must be parted from their woes. I must see to it that this occurs. But to see to this, I need some means. I need a method to ensure it. There is no method but personal achievement of Buddhahood. So I must achieve Buddhahood. This thought process, where it occurs and bodhicitta arises, as I've said. Now, to abandon bodhicitta is to reverse this thought process such that you conclude, I cannot do as I promised and said.
나 대우시는 수수 켈렘버도 수수 침마도 왔다 게 수수 삼을 lö강 왔지세 그래서 다 디간 그 저니버디 샘지 찍을 면에는 셴바 미바 찍으면 도스다서 그래서 다 디가 로마 콤바레스 로 콤고 로 코메 탑시 망고여레스 다념 그로도 당부 공고야디 다단다 저랑 미바 샘지 찍을 미도 셴다 미마투에 제디 아니 다념 미바데 당부 참 거기 샘지 탐지 마시고 이동을 잡아 깨고 깨라 다녀 걸로도 수천부 깨고서 다녀로 고민이나 아니 미국에 그냥 두고 그래 다녀 걸로도 고면은 미국에 좀 두야 깔라가고 요래 그래서 담보 다녀 공부해야 돼 긴생들에
Therefore, to promise and then to renege, in the reneging, one abandons the commitment. Now, your question described a presence with another such that an awareness of all others doesn't occur. This is merely a lack of familiarity or habituation to a mentality that is developed through first equanimity, or rather neutrality. For in order to wish to part sentient beings from their suffering, one must feel a loving affection for sentient beings. In order for that feeling of loving affection to arise, one must have a neutrality toward all sentient beings. It is the development of this neutrality which would be a basis for an awareness.
아니 섬제 탐지 선 미버트는 검대바이나 아니 샘게 강에 메디 섬제 탐지 미버치 통년도 요르스 이나양 스샘 추바다 샘나티 거기 콘도도 원도 유디 아니 섬제 탐지 미버치에 다다 마데니도 요르스는 되게 탑시들라 도저들라 아니 냠내체 가르송어스나 담보 섬제 탐지 섬로 마당하체 수수 미 라는 얘기 아니 드라이처지 발마직 숨 삼았다 아니 고도 숨나서네 따님 곰 아니 따님 야고 곰 투소나 아니 갈레미 거 철철철 섬제 탐지도 곰마이나 아니 미고 세부 차기 유박 로종 나는 미고 곰당 근데 송거래 송스
in the tradition of mind training, the exercise which develops awareness of all sentient beings and great compassion with all sentient beings as the basis of the meditation begins from the acknowledgement that no such great compassion for all sentient beings is possible for any individual who becomes angry and attached to particular individuals. For when this occurs at the same time, great compassion with all sentient beings as object is impossible. So the exercise begins in not taking all sentient beings as basis of the exercise at the beginning, but first selecting a friend and an adversary and a person to whom you feel indifference, and making the experience in relation to them identical, equally neutral in all cases. For this will be the basis later for great compassion with all sentient beings as object. But yang gör det tredje det det kunora.
Kunung det som kunung dana då så pato söjana kan se to this.
And then your second question had to do with taxes, and the experience will be determined by the intention that informs the activity of paying taxes. If it's an acknowledgement of the constructiveness of the law by which we are compelled to give taxes, and it's not an activity that harms others, that will inform the activity in one way. But if one is resistant and disinterested and differently motivated, then this will have an effect on the outcome.
And Jema Kale trade to and send them never so to a loss and you the Kukulungi Chever in the year because the con the shame, but it looked like too simple to you in your Lennox on the Pendoyers.
Now, even the intention as it is applied when a person who's greedy attempts to give generously, in the beginning, such a greedy person is incapable of giving to another. But that person may exercise the attitude that will later allow them to give generously by imagining giving from one hand to another, one hand saying, I don't need this, you may have it, and the left saying, I don't need this, you may have it, such that the exercise makes the person more accustomed to the attitude of giving. So attitudes may be exercised and brought into the practice in this way.
자주sem 줄레께서나 집마다는 자동 열와 대단다 자동 마냥 지들 아니 소소 당고 세나장 아니 드림제 맞는 게 드림제도 맞어 아니 제를 드림제 도쇼 뭐는 잡아이나 자동 자동 녀발에 자동이 예바 막고 제 안에 예바 내 총도 근데 예제나 둬야 근데 여러 자동 가져나 한 개도 가져는 제가
십시를
십시도
저기
자동 저기는 자동 가져지래
알아요.
완전 다 거기 짐발로만 벌려서 짐발마다나
그래.
랑기 짐발로만 벌려 짐발마다 자동 여러
그래.
디마도 자동 마요야 더달 셈 꿀lungu 돈죄 안 같은 걸 제가 레데 택제 투마도 있는 게 저기 제 투어 쇼스 나와이나
그래.
걸 자동 예바 마고요 근데 송여와 어제서 셈 꿀lungu 돈에 마고 써고 해서
When one has developed the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, and then in a moment where one may give generously, does not, this constitutes a downfall. So one would exercise away, purify acquisitiveness, and that may be done through an exercise and an attitude wherein in any given situation, one laments not being able to give and commits oneself to later certainly giving to that person in need, so that never will there ever come a time where one does not instinctively give, or where the mind of enlightenment has arisen to not give to a person in need constitutes one of the downfalls. And so this exercise in any encounter, if one is unable to give, one laments that, unfortunately, at this moment, I'm unable to give to this person, but next time I certainly will. This exercise in an attitude of generosity is for the purpose of preventing any downfall from occurring.
그러니까 돈다도도 가르치고 꿀lungu 제번스래. 가르스나 수술을 지금 제 투약이 차진 차상 유에는 맞잖아. 않고 예바 용화에 인가요. 나야 유에는 맞잖아. 아니야. 그 팀계를 자기로 하세요. 그 데스 꿀lungu 토네. 그 매나 그 탑시 요마르와. 어떻게 삼았다 아니 간다 수족이 간 유tim생데 개침부시라로 왔어. 요즘에는 양 강에 망고했어. 요즘 위에는 여러 얘기 대송 토야에서 탑시에는 송 토야에 개침을 해서 아가리를
야, 양지치 선도 요즘 되겠지 뭐래? 요즘 되게
간다 간다 바이 당에 빼들 잘. 딱 간다 수족의 팀디 송 토야에 차지에나 송 토나 야보를 했어. 야 송마 토야에 차지에나 꿀lungu 토네 고다 송 토마 들으셔도 수족 예바 마요하다 아니 거기 팀다 막에요. 탑시요. 어디 지구로 와서
My point being that the difference is always made by intention. And in the case of paying taxes, which are obligatory, if you are able to do it, to do so with the correct intention is constructive. When it happens that you can't, nevertheless, adjust your intention such that you recognize the purpose and the value, the benefit of the law of the land as it is, and the recognition of the value and the benefit is for the purpose of not inviting a downfall.
Thank you, Geshe, for the teaching, and we're going to visit to the hospice. My question is around the sense faculty. And you mentioned that the sense faculties, we have the three tonalities of feeling of pleasurable, unpleasurable, or neither pleasurable or unpleasurable. And you also mentioned the same for the mental faculty. But the sense faculties actually feed the mental faculty for conception. So are you saying that the feeling tonality happens prior to conception at the point of just pure perception?
Lasso, tijiche, ani peti namada tijiche, dene ani mengan la pepa de la yan, ani jesi rangye, dene ani dugi wambo nga yoro, ani de nga la 아니 서로 숨숨 여버지 근데 이게 서로 라양 요르 아니 아니 이거야라 당보 인직 민직 아니 르기 서로 깨거를 디케 자르네 깨워디 아니 이라 가르사 이 넘버 이 넘버 시드디 아니 루기 서로라 테네 깨야 요레마도 아니 루기 서로 메나 아니 이기 서로디 깨 요마레 티와 가르데스나 당보 루기 서로 깨 제스 아니 이기 넘버 시드디 깨 용그레 근데 렘신도 케비츠 덴데르베
몰라서 선다 칸다 렘방에제 말에 렘방에제 말에 루지 소와테네 리지 소와케바 요레 이지 소와케네 루지 소와를 바케바 요레 근데 네가 찍찍 아무 루지 소와케 아니 이지 소와케고 같은데 네제 준데든데 말에 손
It is not absolutely, or it is not definitely that mental, rather physical sensation must precede mentation or precede conception. Also, too, conception may precede and cause physical sensation.
루지 소와지 뭐지 이 소마케바 주주요 이지 소와지 루지 소마케바 주주요래서
너 여기 있어?
루지 대도 소와 대도 다녀 숨게 깨체 이지 소와 대도 다 소마케바 주주요 이지 소와 대도 다녀 숨게 루리 소와 다도 마케바 주주요래서 거기에 제일
that it is an absolute. There may be the experience of these sensory tonalities with no subsequent conception in any of its tonalities. There may be the conception and its tonalities without a subsequent or simultaneous experience of physical sensation in these tonalities. Later, we will go into more detail into feeling or sensation, and this will explore what's connected to your question.
Yeah.
Are there others?
Yeah.
Thank you, Geshe-la, for your teaching. And I have a question regarding the attitude and exercise. So when I can't give, then I say to myself, I can't give now, but I will give later or next time. And hopefully that, I don't commit a root downfall by doing that, by saying I will do it next time or later. But what if, and this is for lay people, for me, if I see someone who needs possibly money or food or whatever, and I can give, but I decide not to, because I have judgment about that individual. Maybe that individual is not really poor, not really needing the food. Maybe he needs the money for something else and so on. That is harmful for himself or herself. So that's why I refrain from giving that individual. So does that mean I commit a group downfall right there?
아니 계시기 되는 좀 거로 수수기 로종제라 세르나친이나 아니 바로 미 심발라니 테메 투바든지 여러 아니 이는디 소소기 아니 라베 예베기 아니 용발라 아니 제겐 아니 로디 장이 여레스 송소 아니 미직 아니 로모기 합겐직 아니 체드 잠발라 드린 제 톱기면도 아니 마음바 아니 롱주 아니 롱모기 합겐라 아니 체 아니 특바르쇼 아니
제기
인삼 데삼로데 아니 장라 야코레스 송송 얘네들 베나가 임바이나 미키야 나다 임바이나 아니 로모기 합겐지 제드 로모기 합데 드나양 직제나 미디기 뭐네 아니 거기 여기 말에 양매나 공 고거를 땅에 아니 레조 로바 아니 땅에기 있는 게 아니 여버디 학원에 세치치네 학원에 아니 마테나 디 짜통 아니 중그레베 힘들다고 소소기 아니 남체 베지 다네라 리퍼 베지 다네 아니 콩나 제나 아니 콩만 누기를 했었네
야코 일을 내치는 자동 중국을 삼탱을 놓고 가져온 다 빼나 데려와 오늘 딱 농아보 코랑 꿀릉 당원에 상고 매버체 거기에 가다 수정을 코랑 게다제 빼나 가서 코랑 게 미시발을 뇌제가 치돌라 아니 거기 다도 물롱아이나 거기 다도 셀을 뇌제가 제가 년가 요 근데 돈이야 수수 하고는 맞아봐 이나 수수게 맞아고 균생대에 고 집어 땅 맞되는 땅 말와 집어 땅은 그 누구이 봐 하고는 맞아봐 인자 그 자동 중국을 삼 챙기면 도스 지지래로와 또 지단 집어 생기 수수게 받아 로자야 치돌라 가다 집에 냠내기 영향 치돌라 아니 롱아보 가들래나 지단 롱소나 롱얘기 되고 그거 이해다 매다 되게 말 롱일래서는 랑글려 땅고요 집어 스탄다나 이내다 다다고 자동계 맞게 계제 돈을 하고 가지고 괜찮지 돈은 삼을 땅은 이 지기 요인도 자동지 용 어제 연구 말했어 그거 봐서 땅 먹어야 괜찮지 집어 땅도 매네 마땅 말와 어제다 자동계 말해서
I don't think so. In such a scenario, the beggar is not begging with the intention of a beggar, but perhaps it may be the person, a deceitful person who is going to use what you give them to harm another. Conceivably, there's such a possibility. When you use your judgment and conclude that to give to a given person would cause harm, and it isn't from a lack of desire to give that you don't give, but out of your careful judgment that you don't give, this will not constitute, I don't think, a root downfall. When we describe in the context of mind training, this exercising the impulse to wish to give to any person you encounter should they be in need, this is part of an exercise in developing generosity. We move to a different set of considerations when we look to evaluate whether something constitutes a downfall or not. One hasn't got to give to every person when one's judgment recommends that one not give, so long as one doesn't not give from a desire not to give, but only out of their judgment not to do harm. So time has about run out now.
哦，也得，那我做，俺们这个不300万是吧？谢谢，哦，俺们我做，开的，俺那个这开这些开的叫，这两个没声音不给死嘛，搞得真正忙不住的，看这些结尾，这些啊，那300万是吧？300万dari 좀 jauh. 아니 드링 나도 되다. 나도 뭔 거지 버다. 뭔 거지 버. 아니 장주 출ling. 아니 장주 출ling. 중국 아니 나도 출라 돼. 드링 나도 쳐서 패요래. 아니 되게 다 용주 대배 산이 300만 dari 쪽에 어디니 모델 아니 나다 돼 고백이. 내주다 아니 나가다 마 명아 테스트에 예선도 제다 비티인데 아니 딜레 맞아 돼 고리징이 필요하 수자다라 수자다가 고리지 버리다 맞아 돼 취조 가서래 그걸 생각다 아니 그냥 꼭 가서 전도 뒤에서 동바로 취조 진짜 준비 따리 접지 사미만 취조 주벌 아니 돼 아니라고 돼 다간다 잠시 다 안에 지금 저 탤런트들도 제가 딜레야 아니 언제 진짜로 돈에는 수페니나 이런 감마마 지기나로 나스 아니 먼저 다 뭔가 시행 거친 아니 대시 현대 비스 아니 어디서
On Tuesday the 18th, Anila, who is here with us, who is from Mongad to Jiangjuk Choling, will come at 6 o'clock to give a talk and about the nunnery, about her experience, and I think that she'll have some of her experiential insights to share. And so come all who can at 6:30 on the 18th, Tuesday the 18th. The talk is coordinated by Sujata, and I'm proud to have another from Mongad, Pride of Mongad, who will be speaking on Tuesday the 18th at 6:30.
Yes, at dinner, I will be bringing dinner, and if people want to pitch something in of the vegetarian type, that would be much appreciated. Potluck, that's the way to put it.
Yeah,
Potluck on Tuesday night at 6:30. I'll bring my humongous vat of dal and rice. So here, which monastery is it? Is that
in the Mongol.
in Mongol?
Is that a branch of another monastery, or is that the main monastery?
Main monastery.
This man monastery in the near to Gandhi.
Is it in the right between the Devu monastery and Gandhi monastery?
Have you been there?
I don't remember, but I've seen pictures that during the pandemic, some monks that I know from Gandhi came to maybe your nunnery, if I recall correctly, to help distributing the food, the good to the local people.
That's great. Yeah. And it's how much contact the latest Delayani or the
So then good evening to all of you, and I hope that you'll lend support to Anila, and then we'll close with our prayers. Page 12.
Enerindo bele zone kadar yamba kashi sabade lome mari yedon roba nande yave ombo da yuji Dema Sumbe Terang Kundu Yang Jare Yang Je Tsewe Jetsun Tembe Ba Kuzang Namje Jo Nile Rube Jelan Nye Je Jo Rage Jishin Tobe Lamje Ne Chura Tsewe Changbe Tapke Rowe Yiji Mumba Seje Ne Jekwe Temba Yure Zinkyuji Temba Rinji Choji Majaba Chavya Nyamba Yube Chote Ne Nije Chenpo Yira Kyawa Pende Tejin Sewa Chepa Sho Seje Jawe Mejo Chile Lendru Chanju Lamji Remde Jang Tade Nande Yila Vede Sin Yawe Tseba Rindu Kyobirche Lasa Drube Tunjen Druje Gege Seje Meda Neme Sera Kundu Jave Ngamba Yi Namda Namda Teba Magirche Kaze Deva Jola Juju Tsujen Rola Zamba Deise Tode Nadi Kadu Joje Rashi Jasu Chugu Jagir Shi.
From my two collections, vastest faith that I have amassed from working with that this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose mind with mind blinded by ignorance. Even if I cannot reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all my life under Shri. May I find the best of the paths and the complete teaching, and may I be exalted ability by practicing. Using skillful means surrounded by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the mind of all beings with the points of the path as I have discerned them. May I hold these teachings for a very long time, with my heart going out with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined. May I offer this treasure of happiness to aid all sentient beings. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by following the complete graduated path to enlightenment and the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all human and non-human beings that eliminate adversity and make things conducive for practicing the excellent path never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Maya and virtuous practices, may he always be
Dagi Jini Sabe Yewa Di Tena Roa Nuna Tendam Kevara Jesu Lozan Draba Yi Tembe Nimbo Rindu Serje Sho Kare Rawe Gove Shinga Je Pena Dewa Mandu Chame Chere Zewa Tenze Yaso Yi Shabe Site Mardu Tengir Chi Jamsu Hongo Chetar Kempa Kudu Sambo Deyang Dejende Tenda Kunye Jesu Dalo Che Yewa Ina Tamche Radu Yeso Chebe Yawa Tamche Je Mowa Tana Chodu Napa De Daji Jewe Sawa Dikti Yang Sambo Cheje Radu Mowarege Janju Senjo Rembo Je Maje Vana Je Yureshik Yewa Nyamba Lewa Yo Okune Pondus Lewa Ishu.
I dedicate whatever virtues I have ever collected for the benefit of the teachings and of sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Lotan Rapada shine forever. In the land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful sinners and Gyatso, please remain until cyclic existence is ended. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantavad realize things as they are, also I dedicate all these merits in the best way. that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these roots of virtue, with the dedication praised as the best, by the victorious thus gone on 3 times, so that I might perform the noble Boddhisattva's deeds. May the supreme Boddhisattva that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Good night.